Musicians are a special breed. I think that we really, as artists, especially, I don't know if it's true for the players of every instrument, but it's mostly true. I think drummers and bass players, especially, kind of, we gravitate together. They're not as much glory instruments, so therefore, I think, if I dare say, we're a little bit less affected by those things that surround us. We're more interested in. Prior to rolling camera, we couldn't even stop ourselves from talking about playing and setups and all that stuff. And I'm certain it's true with guitars and everybody else as well, but it just seems to be bass and drums, basically. There's a kind of a special thing there, so I'm always glad to help my fellows. I just came back from, I did 3 or 4 clinics and a bass day in England. Rotosound sponsored me to go there, and it was interesting. The only problem was I really played terrible. I played horribly, and I felt terrible about it but sometimes you throw at it and it works, and sometimes you throw at it and it don't, and it didn't. So, but I always learn something from it. So I'm now working hard to on another phase to do more things to prevent bad nights, from happening. So, and here I am. Yeah, I early on, before we had any repairmen or guys to work on instruments or anything in the early days, you either figured it out for yourself or suffered through it. And there was no two ways about it. I remember the first time I tried to get a refret, I sent a neck back to Fender. They sent it back to me, and they never leveled the frets, so the frets were all over the place. So I don't know if it actually went to Fender or not, or where it's so. And Fender is certainly not to blame. But it was a catastrophe. So I found a guy in Buffalo who did refrets, so the only guy. But he never trimmed the edges of the fret wire. And it was, I think I got it fretted in summertime. Now wintertime at Buffalo comes, it gets cold and dry, in the dry heat. And the neck shrunk, and these edges stuck out, and my fingers were, like my thumb and my finger here were torn to shreds, until I was able to get a file and get everything down. So I realized early on I got to do a lot of stuff for myself. And so there's a couple of tricks I learned. This might be a little long-winded, but I'll go ahead anyway. Primarily, I'll take the strings off, take a black magic marker, and paint the frets, the fret surfaces, and down to, about all of them really, but generally this area here. Then you take what's called a bastard file. Believe it or not, that's the actual name of it, is a bastard file. My name has probably been in many bastard files, but it's a different kind of file. And you check it with a straight edge to make sure it's absolutely flat. And most of the files are, because they're used for leveling. So this one of the design parameters of a file is that it's absolutely flat. Just lay it on the board for a second and just move it about an inch. Take it off, and you'll see that some of the frets are still black, meaning they're short, they're low. So as you fret on that low fret, it's buzzing on the next fret that's high after it. So what the point of it is to get all the frets completely level. So what you do then at that point is you take the file and you level until you get all of the frets with the black removed. Then the finer part of the job comes. It's got to be sanded down, usually with a wet or dry sand material that you use to sand down a metal. But first, I'm sorry, I left out one part. You have to re-round the frets again. So you get fret files that, on the side of the file, there's a little cutout, like that. Like the file would be like this. And there's a little cutout with the file grooves in there. So what it does is it takes the edges, now that the file is flat, it takes those edges and takes them down to a round thing, pretty uniformly. It's done by hand, so it's an art, not a science. Then I sand everything down and take it down, and then you restring it, put the strings on it, and suddenly nothing's buzzing, and you can drop the action way down, but have it still respond. Because the problem with taking action way down is that you're going to lose a lot of energy when that string is hitting all those frets that are up and buzzing and sounding terrible, and plus you're losing a lot of energy and not getting any sustain. So this really helps do that. And then you've got to readjust the bridge because the frets are lower now. And with me, I use that pickup close to the frets for my right hand technique, scraping across those. So those got to be adjusted too. So I spent about 2 hours on this bass last night. Still. I like a little bit of buzz, a little bit of grind. I get that little overhang that comes after. That's one of my, I don't know what that actually is, but I use that to kind of test. When I just pluck that note, you get the grind on the frets, but still. You hear a little grind on some of the notes, but not so much that it's going to interfere. You got to get a little Chris Squire in there, you know, for that tonality of it. But and then setting up the intonation and action, like we spoke just before we rolled camera. I'll see some guy playing bass and being awesome. I pick up his bass and I go, he's even more awesome because this bass is impossible to play, you know. So I've always tried to not give myself as many barriers and obstacles as possible and set up the bass. And then by setting it up yourself, also you're fine-tuning it to your own self. You can take it to someone else to do it, and they'll do it. They'll be set to some standard, but of which there are many standards, though. Some guys like the neck to curve a certain way with a drop-off, so it goes along and falls off this way. Some guys like a little bit of bow in the neck. Some guys like it absolutely flat. So you never know what you're going to get depending on the guy who's setting it up. So if you learn to do it yourself, it's not hard. It could be a great advantage to really get it up to a point where you can have it not interfere with your playing at all. That's my story, Savage.
Awesome.
We're just mixing right now a new record, and Kevin Shirley is a producer. And Kevin, he just finished the new Iron Maiden record. He's done Rush records, done the Black Crowes, mixed Zeppelin. He mixed How the West Was Won, I think, and a zillion other records too. I mean, on his website, I ran out of. We're just scrolling and scrolling all the records he's done. It's an interesting process because he's I think he has a different approach with every band he does, but for us, he decided to just let us play and play and play and play and compile takes, you know, parts of takes, not too dissimilar to how the Beatles recorded, where they do, you know, 60 takes of something and get the parts right, you know. And so as a result, it was a real pressure to play the stuff right, because what if this is the part of the take he's going to actually use, and I'm sucking on it, you know, so it was a real pressure. There were times I didn't really like it because I thought, geez, come on, I want to have a chance to go back but you know, and that kind of tension is real good for art and for music, I think. If you walk in and everything's ideal and perfect and it's just fun and cool and fabulous and not a conflict anywhere, the album's kind of like that, you know. But there was times I was like, come on, you know. And Paul said the same thing about his overdubs. You know, he'd be getting his headphones on and then he'd hear the click. Wait, well, hold on, it's like, come on, you know. And then, okay, you ready now? Barely. I didn't even check my tuning. It runs it, you know. And there it is. So it was a kind of a cool way to do it. And you know, we allowed him to be the cop, you know, the guy who would say, okay, enough, we got it, or let's do it again. And so it was a little bit of an adventure. But I think it's hard to build that kind of tension in. It either happens or it doesn't. But I'm kind of glad that it did happen, because as rough as it was, and I tore my hands to pieces, because every take was like, damn it, it's going to be the most, I gotta kill on this and get everything right. And we had a couple of hairy parts that were tough to do. And Paul and I had worked out a couple of guitar and bass things, and they were not easy. You know, one, I forget, it's like a, is in the middle of this other thing, but it's blazing fast, and we got to do it like, lay that one down, go back to the other one, lay that one down again, go back to the other one, lay that, and it was, you know, and I remember we got there early. Kevin usually show up about 12:30 or 1. Paul and I would get there like 10:30. We're sitting there, like, what? How is it going on? You know, just trying to figure it out because we knew it was going to go by quick. But we pulled it off somehow, and it was an interesting experience. But we would record all together. Eric would be in the vocal booth, like right there, watching us. Paul and I in the same room, my bass amp in another room, Paul's guitar amp in another room. And it was real, like old school, real recording of an actual band playing together. Almost unheard of these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. So we got, and again, we came up with about 100 and some pieces of music and parts and ideas. Narrowed that down to our top like 20 and ended up finishing probably 12, 13 things. And we were at the point, do we do a CD with 20 songs on it, or do like 12 or 13 things that we love and we really believe in. So we opted with the latter. And it was stuff that we really think is strong and good, as opposed to, 25 songs, 3 of which we really feel good about, So that's an important thing too. So that's pretty cool. So it'll be out probably early next year, and we're still mixing it as we speak right here. When I go home, I'm going to see what's going on. I'm going to make a few calls.